Welcome everyone. It is my honor to welcome Dr. Odeta Limaj. Odeta holds a PhD from the University of Rome in La Sapienza and had international experience as a researcher at Boston University in US and at EPLF in Switzerland. Since 2016, she is the Scientific Project Officer at the European Research Council, so she is an expert in science research and knows a lot about funding opportunities for scientists. So thank you so much, Odeta, for being with us today. And please, the floor is all yours. Thank you.
In 2007. And is governed by the Scientific Council, which is a group of excellent scientists from all around the world. And the purpose of the ERC is to fund researchers of any nationality in all the fields of science and humanities to conduct research in Europe or associated countries. So the idea is that you have one PI that works in one host institution and runs his or her own project, and there is no other criteria, there is no priority, scientific needs or impact, it's just excellence. So you can come up with the idea you want, and if it's breakthrough and amazing, hopefully you'll get funded. Now, which sort of budget are we talking about in general? So ERC, maybe you know a bit the legal, let's say, or administrative aspects of that. In the Horizon 2020 framework program has got 17% of the budget, which corresponds to around 13 billion. And what could be actually interesting for you is this graph here. As you see, the budget in the last 3-4 years has been increasing continuously. And in 2020, it's going to be the highest one that has ever been there during this Horizon 2020 framework program. So it may be a good year for you to apply in case you're interested. What does ERC offer? So now I'm going to spend a bit of time on this grant, on this slide, because there's a lot of information. So here you see 4, let's say, different squares. In this presentation, I will focus mainly on the individual grants. So those where there is a single PI, so starting, consolidator, and advanced, and I'll get back to this again. But besides this, since 2018, we have again the so-called synergy grants. This were run as pilot program in 2012 and 2013. And then recently, since last year, we started again. And these are somehow a bit broader grants, which include groups of 2 to 4 PIs at any career stage, who are awarded with the grant of up to 10 million plus additional 4 million for specific cases like purchase of large equipment, access to large facilities, or if someone is moving to Europe or associated countries to run this research. This is a particular kind of grant. I'm not going to talk about it in this presentation, but if you have questions, feel free to ask in the question and answer session. What is it about the individual grants? So as you see, there are 3 of them according to the academic, to your academic age. So the starting grants would be suitable for you if you are within 2 to 7 years after your PhD. And with this grant, you can have up to 1.5 million plus extra 500,000 for the same reasons I mentioned before, like access to large facilities, large equipment purchase, or if you're coming from outside Europe to work in Europe. And the grant can run up to 5 years. If we move somehow to a bit of later stage in the career, from 7 to 12 years after the PhD, we have the consolidator grants. Here the grant becomes a bit higher, up to 2 million euros plus extra 750,000 euros in addition for the same reasons mentioned before. And last but not least, if you're a bit more, as the name says, advanced, we have the advanced grant. Here, there is no specific eligibility window saying that you should be within a certain time from your PhD, but you should be able to demonstrate at least 10 years of significant research achievement during your work. And as you can see here, the grant is a bit higher, 2.5 plus potentially 1 extra million. to be added for the same reasons as before. So as I said, I will cover mainly the individual grants, but feel free to ask about the synergy if you wish. One thing that may be interesting for you is that ERC is quite proud of this and is really very interested in supporting and helping, especially researchers in an early stage. So as you can see, start and consolidate, so 2/3 of our individual grants target relatively young researchers. And not only the PIs benefit of this, but also the thousands and thousands of PhD and postdocs that have been supported so far through the ERC grant. So we hope that this somehow creates a pool of PhD, postdocs, and PIs who can benefit from the grant already in an early stage of their careers. Now, how to prepare for an ERC? Now, this is a bit the things I would like to talk about. Why? Because let me say this: the temptation there is that you have a great idea. You're like, wow, this is amazing. I'm gonna do this, and you jump right into literature. We read a lot. You write the proposal, and then you get there. I don't know, 1 week if you're lucky before the submission, and you find out that actually there's a lot of things you should have thought about. So don't do this mistake. Have the enthusiasm there, but please be informed before. So let's take it one step at a time. Let's think you have got an amazing idea. Let's think that through. So is your idea new and beyond the state of the art? The idea for ERC grant is that you should avoid, if possible, incremental research. It should be something breakthrough, let's say. And you should be the right person to do it. So if you have this idea, ask yourself, do you have the right expertise to carry it on? Because the evaluators are going to ask themselves this question. So you should be able to demonstrate through your CV that you're actually able to do those stuff that you're suggesting. In case there is any aspect of this where you are not really spot on in terms of expertise, did you identify the right collaborators to help you? Do you have any idea of which things you're gonna need? Equipment, how many students, and so on. And as crazy as it may sound, this idea, is it actually feasible? Maybe it's amazing, but maybe there are some things that are simply not possible. Try to ask yourself all these things before getting into the actual writing of it. The second important thing that a bit does not depend on you entirely, but you need to get in touch with other people, is the host institution. What does it mean? It means that when you decide to apply for an ERC grant, you choose a host institution, so university, research center, and so on, in Europe or associated countries, where to run your project. And this host institution has to agree to accept you in case, to hire you, to accept you in case you obtain this grant. So you need a letter with specific requirements from the host institution. So get in touch with them early to make some agreements, and get in touch also for the national contact point of the country where the host institution is, because they are informed of all ERC initiatives and they can help you a lot. You can find, I'll show you later, the list of the national contact point names in the ERC website. Next, make sure to be visible. What does that mean? Well, imagine you are a reviewer, you're asked to review a proposal, you get the CV there. First thing you're gonna do, Google the person, right? So try to make this as easy as possible. This may sound as a very silly advice, but try to make yourself accessible and visible, so to be easily accessible by the reviewer. So on, let's say, easier to do, make your profile and expertise accessible online. If possible, make a, I don't know, group website and so on. And a bit harder to get on the short term, but actually quite crucial, work in advance on your publication record. So writing an ERC grant is not about only putting together the text in a couple of weeks, but it's ideal if you could think ahead of this and maybe work a bit on that to build a proper publication record that can support your application. That would be the best you could do, but requires, of course, a bit more time. Then here we get to the actual writing, or almost there. So for the actual writing of the proposal, what do you need actually to write? We try to prepare documents which are as readable as possible. There's a lot of information we need to give you, but we try to make it usable, let's say, and accessible. So try to go on our website, read the guide for applicants, because these documents are put together after tons of feedback from the panel members, from the people working in ERC, and every word is thought like 10 times before putting in there. So there is a reason for this sort of document, and we try to make it not like 300 pages, but like somehow more accessible. And try to do this early, so you realize all the things you need to do, and you don't get there the last week, because otherwise it would be really tough. And another thing is, when you write your proposal, but probably you heard this already from several people, get feedback. Ask people to read it, ask people, maybe even outside of your field, to read it, because it may not be as clear as you think it is. So to get feedback, so to finish it writing in advance, and actually to get feedback from your peers is one of the best things you can do. How is ERC organized? You remember I told you you can research basically whatever you want. It's a bottom-up approach. So the topic of the research comes from you. It's not us asking you to research something. It's you, the ones who decide what you want to investigate, regardless of what it is. But of course, for operational reason, we need to organize things a bit. So as you can see here, we have 3 big groups, which are so-called domains. It's life science, social sciences and humanities, and physical sciences and engineering. Within every domain, there are the panels. So you see LS1, LS2, LS1, up to 9, 6 panels for social sciences and humanities, and 10 panels for physical sciences and engineering. Each panel somehow puts together certain disciplines that are close to each other. So you can see, myself, I work in the PE, in the physical sciences and engineering domain. We have mathematics, fundamental constituents of matter, condensed matter physics, and so on. So one of the things you'll be asked to do when submitting a proposal is to choose one of these panels, but I'll come back to this. The idea is that in every of these panels, there is a group, we hire a group of experts from 10 to 16 panel members who will be physically sitting in the meeting 2 times per year to evaluate your proposal. Actually, that's one of the points. Who evaluates your proposal? So sometimes, quite often actually, I heard people saying, but it's actually you commission people, the ones who decide who gets the grant and not. And that is impossible, simply because we do our best, but we don't have the expertise and the excellence actually to cover properly all the topics you investigate. So our evaluation system is purely based on peer review. We have no saying in deciding who gets the grant. We have to ensure that things are done right, that all rules are respected, but the decision on who gets a grant and who doesn't comes from scientists like you. So from panel members who are high-level scientists that are appointed by the Scientific Council, who's our, let's say, governing body. And we have around 11 to 16 panel members per panel. And these people somehow follow the evaluation through its whole course, from the various steps, step 1 and step 2, but I will come to this again later on. And so usually there are around 600 panel members involved for every call. And I said we have 3 calls, that's synergy, I don't consider it here. So this is quite a lot of people, mainly from EU and associated countries, but partially also from other countries, US, and et cetera, et cetera. Besides panel members, as you see, we have also remote referees. The remote referees are experts that we use only in step 2, and are supposed to be extreme specialists in specific aspects of your proposal, and we ask them for a one-time review. So they don't participate to the whole call, but they just do one remote review for specific proposals. And there's usually around 2,000 of them involved in every call for all the panels. How does the actual evaluation work? So I mentioned step 1 and step 2 earlier. Let's see what that means. So when you submit your proposal, you submit everything at once, but we evaluate it in 2 steps. So in step 1, what happens first is that there is a remote evaluation done by panel members. So all panel members are at home. They receive some assignment of which proposals to read. They write their reviews independently. And when writing the reviews, they are reading the part B1 of your proposal, which is an extended synopsis. I'll describe this more in detail later. And your and your CV, sorry. So they write all their reviews independently, and then they come to the panel meeting here in Brussels, 3, 4, 5 days, depending on the need. And they decide, they do a rank list, and they decide which proposals we go to the step 2. Once we have this decision, we move into the step 2 phase. So again, panel members go back home. We assign to them the proposals again, and now they will do, again, remote review, but we'll read not only part B1, but also part B2, which is an extended part of the proposal where there are all the details of the methodology and resources. But I'll come back to this later on. So they do their individual assessment and so on and so forth, and they meet again for the second panel meeting, so the step 2 panel meeting. And in this meeting, for starter and consolidator, there are also interviews. So we invite the PIs that have been successful in getting in step 2 to give a presentation and to do a question and answer session. And after this panel meeting, there is the final decision on the funding. To be said that both here at the end of step 1 and of course at the end of step 2, you have you receive feedback, of course, so the written reviews by all the experts, the summary of the decision of the panel when they met, and you have the possibility to appeal, to redress in case you don't find the decision fair or if something is wrong. How do they decide? What is the principle, the evaluation criteria? Maybe you've heard this already, but the only criterion we have is excellence. So you have to be good and your research project needs to be good. So as I mentioned before, maybe these keywords are somehow familiar to you, but the research project needs to be groundbreaking in nature, to have scientific impact, to be feasible. And one thing that is often overlooked or maybe misunderstood as well is that ERC appreciates a lot if it's high risk, high gain. What does it mean? That it may happen for other funding agencies that risk is not a good thing, because risk means potential failure. In ERC, actually, risk, of course, as long as it's not completely insane, so there must be some feasibility aspects there, but the risk is good. So if you dare to do something extremely ambitious and risky because you have reasonable reassurance that you are able to do it, this is exactly what ERC appreciates and is looking for. And you as principal investigator, you should be able to show intellectual creativity and independence to show that you're actually able to do this. How do you prepare your proposal? Now, this is the most obvious advice then you can have, but get information. As I said, there's a lot of information that you can get from the ERC website and from the documents we prepare. I'm going to walk you a bit through that, but you can also continue exploring. So first thing, you will need to submit your proposal online. Register early. Don't leave the submission for the very last day, because what if the system is not working because everyone is doing the same thing? You will miss a very important chance. So register early, get familiar with the participant portal, you see the link there, and try to see which sort of templates and field and forms you will need to fill. Use the documents we prepare. We prepare them with a specific purpose. So you will have the work program, which is somehow the document that gives you all the indication of all the calls every year. There is a guide for applicants, which is specific for every call. There is a section for frequently asked questions, and so on and so forth, and some more that I will show you on the way. Talk to your institution grant office. What does it mean? If you choose to go to a certain host institution, it's in their best interest that you win an ERC grant, because you will bring money. So most probably they will have a research office. So get in touch with them. They probably are familiar with ERC applications, so they may help you there. Or find out who ERC grantees are from our website, and if they're very close to your field of expertise, why not get in touch to hear about their experience? And as I said before, contact your national contact point. The names, you will find them in the ERC website. Get information on the statistics. So if you have no idea, let's say, what is the average success rate for ERC grants? If you don't know, it's there. People think that it's extremely hard to get an ERC grant. maybe, but you would be surprised to know that the success rate for the individual calls goes from 10 to 14, 15%, which is actually sometimes higher than several other funding agencies. So there are good chances that if you do a very good job, you can get it. So this is one of the informations you could find there. What else? Panel members. You know, panel members, people who will evaluate your proposal, are confidential. Their names, of course, confidential during the evaluation, and you are not supposed to get in touch with any of them if you have any information during the evaluation, because you could be disqualified. So this is completely to avoid. But at the end of the evaluation, their names are made public. So we publish this in our website. Have a look and see who are these people, so you understand who has evaluated ERC grants in the past, and see who may be potentially sitting in your panel. This information is available publicly. Why not use it? And then the hard question: decide. Are you going to apply or not? Why am I saying this? Because due to very high number of applications in some years, the Scientific Council has decided to introduce some resubmission restrictions. So if you submit a proposal which is very, very poor in quality, you may be prevented from applying for an ERC grant for 1 or 2 years, up to 2 years. So it's important that that you think, well, whether this is the right moment to apply, or if maybe in 1 year you will be more prepared. Maybe your CV is going to be stronger, or your idea more refined. So try to understand, based also on the resubmission restriction, if it's the right moment for you to apply or not. One sort of myth that is out there is that people say, okay, if we're starting, I can apply between 2 to 7 years after my PhD. Let's do that in the very last window, in the very last year. So I will be as mature as I can be, and I would be competing with people, younger people, with respect to me in terms of academic age. So for sure, I'm going to have more chances. Actually, we don't see this in our data. So here you can see a graph of the age of the grantees, and we have this also with the academic age, so years from PhD. I think I don't have the graph here, but the trend is the same with respect to the success rate. So the dashed line there is the success rate, and you see that it doesn't show peaks in correspondence to specific windows at the end of the starting or the consolidator window. So it's relatively flat. And this is the same also if we plot it against the academic age, so years from PhD. So our data do not seem to support the idea that if you apply in the end of your eligibility window, you have more chances of getting your grant. First thing to do if you want to apply, make sure that you can, right? So there are some restrictions in terms of eligibility for starting and consolidator. Make sure that your PhD date is within a certain, within the eligibility window for the grant you wish to apply. Of course, you can have some extension. You will find this information in our website for maternity, paternity, military service, caring for serious ill family members, medical special training, and so on and so forth. And there is no limit to the total extension. So you could see if any of these apply to you and try to see if you fall in the eligibility window. Other thing to check before start applying is the host institution. Now, take into account that the host institution is not something that you decide and then stays as it is. You can change it during the project's life. Also, because what happens quite often actually is that we have our PIs that apply with a certain host institution, and then after they are awarded the grant, so they get an ERC grant, and then another host institution comes in and say, wow, you're actually good, you got an ERC grant, I want to offer you a faculty position. So they move the grant to the new host institution before actually even starting the project. So this is perfectly fine. There is portability. You can move the grant wherever you want. And another thing is that since you plan to go to this host institution, so you will bring substantial money to it, you have the possibility to negotiate which are going to be your arrangement in terms of position, equipment, administrative support, access to infrastructure, and so on and so forth. So it's good that you start to do this while you are planning your project. Rumors. One of the rumors, maybe you've heard this a lot, is that the quality, or actually the fame, the prestige of the host institution is increasing my chances of getting a university grant. So it's important. Well, that is not true. The host institution is not an evaluation criterion, and I'm not just saying just like this, but the point is, if you can change it, and a lot of people change it, how can it be an evaluation criteria? So it doesn't matter. Of course, if you, let's make an example. If you plan to do an entirely experimental project with heavy access to a clean room, and the host institution where you want to go does not have a clean room, well, maybe there is going to be a problem, but it's not a matter of fame or prestige, it's a matter of feasibility. So there is a completely different story. But the prestige of the host institution is not an evaluation criteria per se. How is your project, your proposal organized? So if you access the participant portal, you'll see that the proposal is organized in this way. So there are a part A and annexes, which are mainly administrative documents, and a part B1 and part B2, which are the ones that the panel members get to evaluate your proposal, which are submitted as PDF files. So the part B1, as I mentioned earlier, is the one that is assessed in step 1 and consists of one abstract and potentially explanation of cross-domain. I will come back to this later. An extended synopsis, maximum 5 pages. Your CV, 2 pages. Funding ID, so list of ongoing funding or application, and track record, so the achievements, your main achievement, maximum 2 pages. In all these pages count, references are not counted. So you can put all the references you want to show that you have done your homework, you have read the literature. They wouldn't affect the page count. So there is no need to squeeze it in a very small character at the end of the page. Part B2, this is a part that is assessed at step 2, again submitted as a PDF, and is up to 15 pages and includes methodology and resources mainly. But I'll come back more in detail to this part. As you may recall, this is something I mentioned earlier in the presentation, one of the first things you need to do when submitting your proposal is choose the panel. So choose to which panel you will submit. And this is quite a relevant choice because somehow defines the team of people that's going to assess your proposal. If you think that your proposal is somehow multidisciplinary, so one panel wouldn't cover it entirely, you have the possibility of indicating a secondary panel, but you will need to justify this in the part B1. So explain why, in your opinion, a secondary panel is needed. When the proposals arrive, the panel chair, there is one panel chair per panel, has to make sure that all the relevant expertise requested for that proposal is present. So can ask for cross-panel reviews, so reviews from experts in other panels, or from experts that are working in other calls. So trying to cover all the aspects. If the expertise requested for this proposal is not present at all in that panel, then the transfer of the proposal to another panel is also possible under obvious, careful circumstances and agreement from the various panel chairs. So choose your panel thinking of which is the one that you think may appreciate it the most and which is the sort of audience you want to read your proposal. What can help you in this? Because maybe you are not familiar with this sort of projects. Try to figure out which sort of project we have funded in the past, right? And this is again an information you can find in our website. So there is year C funded projects. You see the link here. You can go there and scroll through all the various schemes and see what we have funded in the past to see the sort of project that have been funded in various panels. So maybe you don't know whether to apply in P3, P4, P5, I don't know, I'm saying random panels. Go and check which project they have funded and see whether yours fits or not. Next, part B1. So what is this about? As I said, in step 1, the panel members see only part B1. They evaluate this, some of them may evaluate this as generally. So try to make sure that is accessible to a broad audience. Make sure it's carefully drafted so that you give the right impression, and be careful with excessive highlighting and avoid jargon. Why I'm saying this? Because we receive more and more complaints from panel members who say that applicants should somehow try to avoid, let me say like this, overselling it. So sometimes you find sentences where 15 words are somehow fancy words, groundbreaking, high throughput, boost, blah, blah, and actually there's no content. Remember that the people assessing your proposal are scientists. So always keep this in mind when you write the proposal. Avoid jargon, so try to make it accessible to the broadest audience possible. In this, as I said before, asking your peers in various disciplines to read it may be a good way to get this. Also, what panel members need to assess in this first part is the feasibility of the project. So, do you provide enough elements for them to assess this? So whether it's feasible or not, okay, it's a high risk, high gain idea, it's amazing breakthrough, but can you actually do it? Provide them reasonable reassurance that you can. Which are the sort of questions you should ask yourself when writing part B1? This is somehow repeating what we mentioned here and there. Is the project new? Is it innovative? Does it go beyond the state of the art? So we should avoid incremental research. Can I prove my case? Can I prove the feasibility? Are my goals realistic? Is it timely? Why wasn't done in the past? Show that you did your homework. Show that you did the literature search. What's the risk? If there is some risk, don't hide it. They will notice. Bring it up and show that you thought about it, that you didn't simply ignore it, and maybe why not present some plan B, some ways to go around it. About the principal investigator. So, which are the sort of questions you should ask yourself? Why am I the best person to carry it out, right? You have to convince them that you are the right person to do this. Are you able to work independently? Think that they are giving you, they are giving you millions of euro for 5 years to manage your PhDs, your postdocs, and so on and so forth. Are you able to handle it? So show them that you can. Am I international competitive? Have you had any exposure, I don't know, to conferences, collaboration, stuff like that? Have I shown my scientific leadership in my CV? Walk them through your CV, right? So explain what you have done, what your contribution has been in the various papers. Give them some idea to get to know you. Part B2. So part B2 is the one that is read by panel members and remote referees during step 2. As I said, this part is an extended part, so it's mainly on methodology and the discussion of the resources. Do not repeat the synopsis. So go into the details of the methodology and explain your work plan. Make sure that you explain what the team members are going to do, what collaborators are going to do, and justify your resources. So explain your budget properly. Why do we say this? At odds with what some may think, is not that panel members have fun cutting the grants. It's not their money. There's no reason for them to cut it, and we insist that they don't do it across all proposals just to make up some extra money to fund more. Every proposal needs to be assessed per se in its own merit. But of course, if you're saying I will ask money for 6 postdocs, and it's not really clear what these people are going to do, and this number seems a bit inflated, the panel members will say 6 postdocs seems to be too much to me. I think 3 are enough. So they won't micromanage your budget, but they will assess the resources that you ask for. So try to justify them properly. Show them that you have thought through the use of the resources that you have. Also remember, ask for open access. So for Horizon 2020, Open access is a contractual obligation, so you have to make the output, your publication available open access within 6 months. And of course, since we ask you for that, you can ask money for it. So if you want to go for gold open access and to pay the fees for the journals, make sure to ask for this funding. What are the typical reasons for rejection? Well, in the research project, it can go from too narrow, so in the scope, so like, okay, we are giving you millions of euros for 5 years, you haven't been ambitious enough, or too broad. Let's say this person is all over the place, wants to do everything, it doesn't make too much sense. Incremental research, you have been doing this for the past 10 years, what are you doing new in this project? We don't know. Collaborative projects, several PIs, you seem to be just one of many collaborators and it's not really clear why you are the leader there. Work plan, not detailed or clear enough, so the panel members cannot really understand what you're going to do. On the principal investigator, maybe there is an insufficient track record or insufficient potential for independence. You didn't make your case clearly. As I said, you have the possibility to address at the end of step 1 or step 2. Just keep in mind that this is peer review. So the fact that you don't agree with the opinion of one reviewer is not a sufficient reason for having your redress case accepted. The redresses are usually accepted only if there is an obvious mistake. And this may result in a reevaluation of the proposal. So just keep this in mind. What happens if you pass to step 2? If you pass to step 2, you are notified around 2 months in advance. You will be informed of which is the format of the interview for every panel. We give total freedom to every panel to run the interview as they want, making sure they give the same time slot to each applicant for fair and equal treatment. What may happen is that panel members during the interview, after your presentation, will ask you to address the concerns that they have and that maybe were also raised by the external reviewers, those that provided a remote review but are not there in the room to discuss. Almost at the end, what is coming next? As you see, the next, so now we are in the middle of starting grant 2019. We just started Consolidator 2019. The next call that we will have is Advanced 2019. It will open around May 2019, and the deadline is towards the end of August. And you have almost 400 million euros, so estimated 166 grants. Of course, this can vary. And the other grants are Synergy and starting 2020, but as you see, these belong to the 2020 work program. So the document for this is not out yet, but the expected dates are for Synergy to open in July and submission deadline in November, and starting open in August and submission deadline in October. But these are all to be confirmed, and we will need to wait for the approval of the work program 2020 for this. I think that during the question and answer, I'll leave it here. Yes, so you have some links, and I won't go over them because I said it a lot of times. And so I think the best thing we can do is leave it here and get a question from you if there is any. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Odeta. It was very, very informative, everything that you told us today. And yes, I encourage everyone to go to the Q&A section and ask all the questions you have to Odeta. Let's start. There are already 2 questions. Esan is asking the 2-4 PIs for Synergy grant. Can they be both one institute or shall be from 2-4 institutes? Thanks.
So for the Synergy grant, there is no limitation in this sense. What do I mean? It can be from 2 to 4 PIs, and it doesn't matter whether they are all in the same corridor, in the same host institution, in the same city, or if they are spread around Europe, if someone in Europe or associated countries. The only constraint that we have, which is actually something new that happened since this year, is that since 2019, maximum 1 PI per team can be from outside Europe and associated countries. and can be a PI and get the grant and wouldn't need to move to Europe. So what do I mean? That you can have someone from, let's say, Netherlands, Germany, France, and a person from Australia. So you can have a team like this, and the university in Australia will get the money and will be part of the team. So there is no restriction in terms of geographical distribution. People can be even in the same institution in Europe or associated countries. The only limit is that maximum one PI per team can be from outside Europe or associated countries.
Okay. Olga is asking, I am an external expert for several EU instruments and a consultant for medical education company medical grants, pursuing and partners. Are there any ERC programs for continuing medical education? Thank you.
For continuing medical education, if for medical education I'm not sure I interpret your question correctly, but if for medical education you see it as research, yes, in the sense that all the life science panels, a lot of them have medical applications and so on, but it is not meant as education, it's meant as research. So it would be a grant like the others. You will need to do research, carry on, find results, have your own team, and so on and so forth. So I don't know if this answers your question, but it's not education. These are all research grants. And in the topic of medical sciences and so on, that would be in the life sciences domain.
Sure. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Perez Conesa is asking, are these dates of opening always the same? For example, August for starting grants?
Are not always exactly the same, are almost always the same in the sense that we have a very dense calendar. So usually they every year they tend to fall more or less always in the same month. But what is legally binding are the dates that are written in the work program. So hopefully before the summer break, we will have the work program 2020 coming out. And those are the legally binding dates where you see the real numbers that matter. So here I wanted to give just an indicative date for the 2020 codes, just for you to have a rough idea. We don't expect that to change, but we cannot confirm 100%. Usually the month is the same, but we need to wait for the work program to see it.
It can change, sure. Esan is asking, for the starting grant, if I have, for example, 4 working packages in my proposal, out of which I have no scientific record in 1 or 2 of them, but it went out. But I saw that I can manage these packages. Is it okay, or can it be something negative?
This is a very specific question on non-specific proposal. So this would be difficult for me to handle because we are not supposed to give, let's say, advice or like consultant feedback on specific proposals. So it really depends on your assessment and what the panel decides. So it wouldn't be us at the end to make the call. It would be them. So I'm not sure we can give precise number on how many work packages you have to have expertise on. And not, it's really blurry the definition there, and I'm sure I cannot say more because there is no precise answer to that. So it will be really for you to check what is the main topic of your proposal, see whether you have all the main ingredients there, and then accessory things that are needed but you consider are not crucial. Maybe you can rely on collaborators, but this would be really a case by case situation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Alina Trifan is asking, are there any constraints in terms of publication track for a PI applying for a starting grant? Thank you.
Constraints in general, if I remember correctly, the only constraint, if you wish, that is there is that you should be able to show that you published at least one paper without your PhD advisor. I can double check this again. It's in the work program, but if I remember correctly, there is no other limitation, but just at least one public. So it's well seen that you have papers without your PhD advisor because it shows independence. And if I'm not mistaken, you have to report at least one.
Okay.
But it's written in the guide in the work program, and I can double check this again. But if I don't remember, if I'm not wrong, it's exactly like this.
Okay, Esan is asking again, do you personally recommend young researchers to apply for Synergy grant? I guess you must have a sort of years of experience or at least one previous grant from IRC to apply for Synergy. Is that correct?
No, in the sense that you don't need, there is no requirement for such. And what we say to our experts is that when they assess the team, they need to assess the meaningfulness of every PI being in the team, the complementarity of the team, but it is not needed that each of them separately is at the level of getting an ERC grant or an individual ERC grant or had an individual ERC grant before. So this is not a requirement. Then, of course, if you put it another way, let's assume you have a team of 4 people who are at starting grant level. Not that have a starting grant, but that they are at that stage of their career. That you have a team of 4 people who are advanced grant level. This will show in the track record. So most probably the panel will evaluate more positively the last 4 because they have more track record. But this is there's no requirement per se on which level you need to be to apply. What we have observed, data that we have seen in the submissions that we had last year, is that indeed, even though we would like a lot of young people to apply, people tend to apply to Synergy when they are a bit more towards the advanced stage of their career. That's the trend that we have observed, but we don't put any constraint there. And we enforce, actually, we push a lot with the panel members not to put any limit there because it's not an evaluation criteria.
Okay, cool. We have another question. Hello, thank you, very interesting talk. How is independence evaluated, particularly on the starting grants? If you finished your PhD not long ago, how can you demonstrate your independency? Thanks.
Okay, this, I guess there are different ways to see this, also depending on the discipline. There are no clear requirements in terms of independence. What do I mean is that, let's put it like this: if you publish 2 papers instead of 5, the panel member cannot hold it against you. If you don't have funding yet, they cannot hold it against you. These are not requirements per se. We don't say you have to have at least 1 funding to apply. So each and every one of these parameters is not needed to get an ERC grant. But then, of course, I try to put myself in the shoes of an evaluator and be like, how would I assess the independence of a person? What can help? Of course, publication record is one of them. Of course, if you published without your PhD advisor, that is, I guess, a good indication of it. I don't know, if you participated to conferences, maybe you have been invited to some conferences, maybe you organize yourself conferences, you have collaborations outside of your immediate vicinity in your university. Of course, that is an added value. Maybe you had the chance to follow some master students. Well, put it there, that would be nice. So all these things that show that you are an active person that has done things and has taken initiative are positive, but each and every one of them is not something because of which your application should and can be dropped. So they are not requirement, but of course they can give somehow a broad indication that you are actually moving towards an independent scientific career.
Olga is asking, is it possible to combine ERC grants with other funding sources? Are there any specific rules for that?
There are rules, but actually do not depend on us. They depend on the, if I'm not mistaken, on the host institution and other things. So you can have more grants, but of course, if you declare, let's say that you work 100% on the ERC grant, and then you declare that you work other 80% on another grant, your host institution would be, I guess, concerned and wouldn't allow that. So there are some constraints there on your working time, the time that you declare you will dedicate to that. So this is, of course, not possible that you have 200% of time. But for ERC per se, there is no problem. One thing that may happen is true that during the evaluation, you declare the various funding that you have, and then panel members may notice that you have an ongoing grant which has its topic which is extremely similar, for example, to the ERC that you submitted. And they may wonder, well, then is the ERC novel? What is the overlap there? And they may ask you at the interview. So this is more on the scientific side, let's say, but becomes a matter of novelty. And then there is a point on the work commitment and your employment, but that is not really ERC's call. It's more general rules at host institution and national level, I would say. So there is no restriction, but there are some things that are checked, not by us, but are checked, yes.
Okay. Socaras is asking, I would like to do a PhD on international relations between Latin America and the EU. There are projects in this issue. I guess there are possibility of funding this kind of.
Say so. I don't. Of course, I don't know by heart, but I would say so. What would I do if I were you? You can look at if you would like to work in a lab or in a group on a PRC grantee that is being funded. Maybe you can search through the funded project, see if there is something that's very close to your topic, and maybe check if that group and so on has openings and positions and they're hiring. But there may well be, but I don't know by heart the topic of the various funded projects. So you can check through the website maybe.
Okay. San, you mentioned 2020 is probably a good year when it comes to the amount of budget for ERC grants. You mean to apply this year for a starting grant, for example?
It was kind of a general statement simply because the budget in 2020 will be the highest that we have ever had in Horizon 2020, because you saw the graph, so it keeps increasing. So the last year is higher, so simply more money means that we can fund more projects. So, but of course, if we receive much more applications, the success rate is going to be the same. So it's really hard to tell, but we will have more money. So hopefully we can fund more people. And of course, this includes starting as well, but it was meant for all the various calls, starting, consolidated, and advanced.
Okay, there's one more question from Tamara, but I don't understand really what she means. Can I combine remote work with grant? I don't know.
But I don't understand what the
yeah. Okay, I think there's no more questions. Thank you again, Odeta. It was a pleasure for the presentation, and it was a pleasure you answered all these questions. It was really interesting.